followers. Jeez.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. I've been on Twitter for 11 years, wasted 11 years of my life. Good things have come out of it. But yeah, it looks like we're live there now. So I'm going to go ahead and actually retweet this as well from another account, the Build on Eigen account. Okay, cool. All right, well, we're back. This is another casual stream. And today I'm catching up with one of my old friends in the Web3 space, Armani. So Armani, do you want to go ahead and just do a quick intro and tell everyone like who you are and maybe what you're working on?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. So who am I? Yeah, I'm just a programmer in the Web3 space. Been in crypto for not too long, not too short. Working on a bunch of stuff. Most recently working on Backpack Exchange, Backpack Wallet, MadLads, all that good stuff. Yeah, I don't know how to like non-awkwardly plug the products.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm going to cover most of it because I personally have a lot of questions, and this is a good chance for me to kind of just get caught up on all this. But I'll give some context about how me and Armani met. When I first got into Web3, like in 2021, I was writing a lot of tutorials like about the stuff that I was learning. And at the time, I was writing a tutorial on Solana development, I believe. And I was trying to get connected with different folks within the Solana space. And at the time, Anchor was kind of like starting to become well known, and it was just so much easier for me to build with Anchor. And we got connected through that. We've kind of, I guess, stayed in touch since then. So you've been a Solana OG for how long have you been working in the Solana space?
I came to Solana in September of 2020. So however, almost not exactly 4 years, 3.5 years, I guess. Yeah.
So almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years, yeah.
And you are still like, what is the stuff that you're doing? Like, what are you doing right this second, I guess, is the next question I have.
Yeah, right this second, building Backpack Exchange, building Backpack Wallet, building all things kind of in those two realms.
And Backpack is essentially like Coinbase, right? It's a exchange.
Yeah, it's Coinbase, really focused internationally right now. So in all the markets that Coinbase is not really focused on.
Okay, so where are you all like located?
Around the world. So I'm in Tokyo right now, but we've got folks and offices and countries around the world. We got folks in Tokyo, folks in Vietnam, folks in the UAE, folks in literally every country you can imagine.
Are you living in Tokyo, or are you just there like nomadically working?
A little bit of both. I'm kind of like nomadic, kind of all over the place. But yeah, currently in Tokyo. Love it here.
What time is it there?
It's 12 a.m. So I should be sleeping right now.
But my bad.
No, it's so hard to schedule, and honestly, I'm so used to it. Given the U.S. is this is peak U.S. hours, and
I don't know why. For some reason, I thought you were in Chicago.
Yeah, I was in Chicago for a while, like last year, but yeah, now in Asia.
Well, thank you for working with my time, and making it for this. But yeah, so what made you decide to build an exchange? It's like a really massive undertaking. It's a super valuable thing because like the onboarding of all crypto for newcomers like happens through exchanges. And there aren't like a lot of really great ones that are out there. I think Coinbase is obviously in the United States what most people are familiar with, and it's pretty good. I've had my own, challenges with it, but overall I would say it's fairly good. But there's obviously like a lot of potential for building much better things. So maybe curious what your thoughts are in terms of like what you're doing and why you're building in this space.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, Coinbase is certainly like one of those really incredible institutions and just like an incredible like pioneer in the space, and certainly a company that I look up to and a company would like to emulate in many ways. But yeah, wholeheartedly agree with you. There's they've kind of gone their path, and I think there's a bunch of interesting paths to that have been left unexplored. And really the story for us really started with, like with many other people, the collapse of FTX. Strongly believe that was like a pretty kind of enormous inflection point for not just us, but for the entire industry. It was a point where I think it forced and is continuing to force the industry to mature in a million different ways. Whether it's fixing all the problems with baked in trust where it shouldn't be, and building kind of like high quality trust minimized systems, whether it's a centralized exchange or whether it's on-chain protocols themselves. And I think it really kind of created an opportunity for, I think, a lot of people to kind of usher in kind of like a new wave of whether it's protocols or companies or products. And for us, we certainly saw the opportunity in the exchange space. And to the untrained eye, if you look at crypto exchanges, you might look at them and think, oh, well, there's so many crypto exchanges that exist. Like, why start a new one? And, if you actually start like going down the list and thinking about how exchanges are really tackling the market, you actually run into kind of a subtle insight that, well, there's actually an enormous opportunity for a fresh set of eyes to actually, forge a new path. And I think, especially with FTX, there was obviously a bunch of horrible things that happened there with fraud and whatnot. But it was definitely a real business. Like, they were making real money. And I think that point is maybe like contentious and maybe not like super, I guess, like a palatable given like all the craziness that happened there. But it was a super real business. And the growth was certainly a real. I mean, you can maybe argue and challenge like exactly how that growth was achieved. I mean, I wasn't there during those kind of like crazy kind of the initial growth phases. Who knows if they're using customer funds or whatever. But Binance, Coinbase, these kind of exchanges are, probably have onboarded more people to self-custody, even by accident, than most decentralized protocols. Like, it's a super important top of funnel. And that's kind of really the perspective that we were taking to the centralized exchange space. It's really this kind of really important institution that is able to bridge, the traditional financial economy into the crypto economy. And so for us, we have like the wallet front and center. I've spent a lot of time working on smart contracts. And if your goal is to just bring as many people on chain, and like, there's no better place to do it than through the centralized exchange. And so, you see this in a lot of the way that we're building product, like the mobile app, the exchange, and the wallet, a single app. It's like almost like pretty hard to tell the difference between the two. Even on the web, the extension is built like really natively into the experience. It's all about, making it as seamless as possible to go from like fiat anywhere in the world to getting it on chain as fast as humanly possible, and really bringing self-custody like front and center. And we have all the niceties and all the affordances given to you by a centralized exchange, great user experience, like the easiest way to buy crypto. But ultimately, we want to bring people on chain to, do all the cool stuff that you can do in crypto and Web3 and experience self-custody. So I think that's like maybe what's a bit different about how we view things. I think like companies like Coinbase are like starting to go on chain, and they have these like on chain summer memes and things like this, which is great. But we're very much starting there and kind of taking it from that perspective.
So is it a Solana native exchange, or do you support like EVM and all these other networks? And I'm curious, like, what is supported now and what might be supported in the future?
Yeah, so we currently support Solana, Sol and SPL tokens, Ethereum, ETH and ERC20 tokens, and Bitcoin. So the exchange, it's not a smart contract. So it's not like Orca, or it's not like Uniswap, or it's not like a smart contract on an exchange. It's a separate system in its own right. So like closer to like a Binance or a Coinbase, where you have to deposit and withdraw to the exchange, and it has its own separate exchange ledger. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that does. I have quite a few questions that I could go into in terms of the exchange specifically, but we don't have a ton of time. These discussions are, kind of meant to be kind of short and concise. But I do have one more quick question about building something like this. Coming from a developer like yourself, who's just like, very well regarded. Everyone knows that you're really smart and you're really, just good. You could pretty much do whatever you want. You're working on like developer tooling, and then you kind of pivoted into being a founder. I'm just curious, like, what that journey was like for other people that might be considering doing the same, and if you like are if you have any maybe advice for people that are like maybe following a similar path, they want to become a founder of something successful, and they're maybe just getting started building in some community, whether that is Solana or some other community.
I mean, the challenge with, I think, questions like this is like it's so context specific. So anytime you have like startup or founder advice, it almost like never applies to you. Because like the circumstances that everybody is in is just like so different. But I do think there are like some unique or there are some like universal truths and universal advice that I think applies. I think like one first and foremost is like all advice is like bad advice, and like you need to be really comfortable with that, and like you need to be like really kind of internalize the idea that nobody, or at least in my view, is like really going to tell you the answer, and you just have to like figure it out yourself. I'm almost like I'm not like against mentors. Like I love like building relationships with people, especially younger people that haven't that are maybe have gone through similar things as me, and maybe I could help them out or whatever. But I've never really personally leaned on mentors for this reason. It's always felt like that's like a good kind of just heuristic for like, should you be doing this? It's like, if you need the external help, then like maybe you shouldn't. And I think maybe closely related piece of advice is from the founder of NVIDIA. He's like kind of all over social media these days for whatever reason. I forgot exactly what he said. He said like startups are like pain and suffering, and like the amount of pain and suffering that you'll go through is just like 100 times more than you'll ever expect. It like sounds so dumb, but it's so true. And I think that those are like the two main like universal pieces of advice that like you can apply to basically everyone. And then everything else is just going to be so specific that it's really hard to like be intellectually honest. And like you can tell stories like I can tell stories that are specific to me, and they might be provide a useful framework for thinking about things, but they almost certainly won't apply to, you know, people listening because their circumstances will be so unique and different. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that makes
definitely
sense.
challenging.
So there's this book that everyone talks about called the hard thing about hard things, and they're like, oh, you have to read
Yeah,
this if you want to do a startup. And I read it like 8 or 10 years ago or something like that, or whenever it
yeah,
was like first becoming popular. And I was like reading it, and I was maybe like 1/3 of the way into it, and I was like, I originally read it because people were like, this is a startup book for people that want to build startups, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna learn something. But 1/3 of the way into it, I'm like, this just sounds like a horror story. Like, is this just a book about this guy getting like his like ass handed to him over and over and over, and like
yeah,
everything going
yeah.
wrong? And by the end
That's
of the
right.
book, I realized that's exactly what it is. Like the whole book was just about him getting fucked over and over and over, but like continuing to stay building. And like I'm like, oh, okay, that's the whole lesson here. It's like it's basically like torturous, or like, you know, a lot of just things that just go wrong consistently. And I think that was the whole point of the book. You just keep going, and you have some type of vision or some type of conviction, then you're building towards that.
Yeah, I can go on to this. I could go on this topic forever, but I'll be respectful of time.
Okay, next question. I've been keeping up with the whole MadLads thing, and I don't hold a MadLads yet. I might buy one, but the but like I've seen it kind of follow you along from your earlier like journey, like I said, of kind of like being a developer in the Solana community and ecosystem, launching Backpack, now launching your exchange, and you know, how does that tie into all this? And yeah, just curious about the story behind that. If you can kind of give a quick summary of that.
I mean, I think there's obviously what MadLads started at as, and then there's kind of what MadLads became. Um, I think, you know, for us, it's always been about product. The entire, original experience of MadLads, it was all the storytelling was always done through Backpack. So we did the whitelist experience, we did the mint, and then we did everything after. You know, we did Rick rolls, we did, you know, XNFTs, staking, selling merchandise. It was always done through kind of the product. We were like, oh, what are the cool kind of, you know, NFT things that we can do on Solana? And so Backpack was like a really great delivery mechanism to experiment with product, and to kind of tell the story of MadLads. And I think, you know, it was on the one hand, like a product endeavor, but on the other hand, like a really creative endeavor, and a pretty genuine exercise in community building. And kind of, out of that, I think really kind of blossomed like a really kind of genuine, group of people around the world, kind of, forming around these like kind of group chats and JPEGs and profile pics, which maybe to the outside world sounds a bit silly and strange. I mean, if you're in crypto, which I suppose most of the listeners are, it's pretty common. But yeah, it just blossomed into its own genuine community. And I think the really kind of fortunate thing about us and about MadLads is that every NFT holder has two products, right? They have a wallet and they have an exchange. And so for us, it's this really kind of symbiotic relationship where we can build our company. We can work on our product. We can keep iterating and experimenting. And we can do it alongside a group of people that are willing to test it out, give us feedback, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and also shout from the rooftops and help us promote it. And it's been like, a really unique experience. And I think it's kind of part of what makes crypto special. So yeah, it's been a great way to build a company, build a product, build a community. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So something that I had Mert on here last week, and one of the things that I've always talked about and that we talked about a bit there was the Solana community and developer ecosystem that kind of held on through the bear market, which was pretty bad in general. It was very short, fairly short, and it was especially bad for Solana at the time. Like, there was a lot of people that were calling Solana dead, people literally taking their projects and leaving. But there were also a lot of developers that literally just stuck around and never left, and they rode the wave back up. And when you kind of are a developer and you're looking and trying to figure out where you want to build with people that have conviction, and you want to build with people that have, values and that kind of are sticking around for the long term. And I don't think that there was a community that like was around during that whole time that really showed as much conviction as the Solana developer community during that time. I'm just curious, like, how it was to be building during that time, and then to kind of see everything swing back, and now Solana is kind of on top in a lot of different metrics in a lot of different ways. And just curious what your perspective is on that whole story.
I mean, I feel like part of it was certainly just like frustration around just a lot of misinformation, I think. I think certainly the whole FTX collapse had a really negative effect on Solana that really kind of changed or really informed, I think, a lot of my view of the world, because I think I had this really unique position where I was like far enough to like not like be like kind of encumbered by the situation in the sense, but I was close enough to like be able to see all the dynamics at play, particularly within Solana, and be able to see things that were just like blatantly false, and and people would just run with it, and it really kind of like really changed, I guess, my view of like people's like perception of reality, which is that like, well, reality is not the same thing as perceived reality, and that's and the perception of reality is probably the thing that is most viral and infectious in both a positive but also a really negative way. And so I think that was really in the beginning a big part of it. I think certainly developers have a much easier time, particularly in crypto, having conviction, as people like to say, because they know ground truth, right? You can think of things from first principles. Like kind of that parallel runtimes have to exist. Who the builders are building real stuff in the ecosystem. What's real. What's fake. That I don't know. SBF had nothing to do with any of the kind of engineering, right? He literally couldn't describe to you like the way a blockchain works if he wanted to, and so I think although there was all this noise that was happening throughout, kind of going on Twitter and on news and all this stuff, is I think it was a crucible moment, and that's kind of like I think what's really special about crypto. I mean, Solana had its moment, but I think all the special blockchains had their own moments. Ethereum certainly had its own moments, and it's really easy to like look back on those things and like gain your own conviction, right? Where, okay, if those guys made it through, you can probably make it through. And so, yeah, it was a crucible moment. It was sink or swim, super frustrating. But yeah, it's probably better off as a result. It's more decentralized, more resilient. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. It was a weird thing because it sucked really bad at the time, but I feel like it is better off now. The community is probably better off now because you can look at that whole series of events and be like, okay, these people really believe in this and they have conviction, and it's just a good signal for developers when they're looking to spend literally often like a year or two of their lives like building into an ecosystem to kind of see if they're gonna want to stay there or not. There's just so much noise in the Web3 space; it's unreal. There
Yeah.
are, I mean, obviously, like now hundreds of different networks that people can choose to build on, right? And they're all competing for attention. So,
Yeah.
how involved are you still with the Solana developer community, I guess?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not like super like in the like I'm not like, I guess, in the trenches in the same way that that I previously was, where I was basically like a DevRel for Solana unintentionally when I was working on Anchor. It was totally unintentional. I part of it, I just like it. I think Solana is just like an awesome ecosystem, and I just like working on developer tooling. So from that perspective, I'm like less like on the front lines doing that type of thing. But I'm still super active in Solana. I mean, it's where I spend like basically all of my time, with the wallet, with the exchange. These are Solana first products. And so it's, if I had to pick
So
a home for a blockchain, it's Solana, right? So,
totally, yeah. I had asked you a question recently about like what are people using to build right now, because my last good experience on Solana was building with Anchor, but it's been a while, so I was just kind of curious if that was what people are still using. And I think you said that people are building using both Anchor and Rust. It just depends on the person, maybe.
yeah, I think I mean, certainly different developers have their own kind of thoughts on these types of things. I certainly think it's still the easiest way to build smart contracts. Like nothing, I think, comes close. I think if you need high performance, it's always been the case that you don't want to use Anchor, because Anchor really
Right.
prioritizes like convenience and security above all else. Just like make it as easy as possible.
Right.
And
It's
that's
like a
always
good
kind of been
abstraction to like get started building, but you start
yeah.
running into like those sorts of issues, you might just drop down into Rust straight
That's
up.
right. Yeah. And if you're building something that complicated, then you will have the skills to do that. And that's kind of the expected kind of evolution of the developer experience.
Nice. A couple of other questions getting back to building the exchange. Is this the first time you've become a founder?
Yeah. That Backpack's like my first company.
How
Or
many
first it was
people
the
are
wallet and then
working?
the exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, so Backpack started when you started Backpack as a wallet. Did you know that it would become an exchange, or did it kind of
No,
evolve into that?
no, had no idea. I certainly was not expecting to build an exchange. I mean, the exchange was just, a function of so many things, right? It was like an opportunity that we saw, that it came out of nowhere, right? It was, but when we started Backpack, we did not see the opportunity. And then once FTX collapsed, the opportunity kind of emerged, obviously. And then, the special thing about an exchange is that it's this crazy mix of skills. It's like no single person can go build an exchange, like, which is like kind of crazy. You see all these founders that are like, just held up on a pedestal as like these like gods, whether it's, Brian Armstrong or CZ or the old SBF or whatever. But it's like, yeah, no, it's insane. Like, we would not be building this exchange without like all the co-founders of it. Just like this insane mix of operational, of legal, of engineering. It's like, it's an incredible thing. So yeah, I did
How
not,
many
to answer your question, I had no idea.
how many folks are working with you there right now?
Oh, right now we have about 45 to 50, depending on how you count. There's like contractors and part-time folks, but yeah, it's a lot, given like, where we're at.
And can people use Backpack all around the world, or is it only available in certain places?
So it's only available in certain places at the moment. We're mainly kind of restricted in, a couple kind of key countries at the moment. So US, we're slowly going into it, but that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of money. Large parts of the EU we're not in, and Japan we're not in, but we are actively working on all of them. And our goal, we have this like metric internally that we're trying as hard as possible to hit, is we want to get to 95% of the world's GDP by the end of the year. So we're optimistic that we'll hit it or get close, but yeah, we're not quite there yet, but we're certainly working towards it.
So getting into the US, is it just mainly around legal and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's an entire process of going to all 50 states and getting all the MTL licenses. Takes got to set up a company, a team, get people that have done this stuff before. It's not easy, and it's a totally separate skill set than just building or developing a product. And so yeah, luckily we have an awesome compliance team, folks that have really have really good kind of experience in this area, and so yeah, lean on them a bunch. But yeah, we're certainly going into the US.
Nice. So I think we're getting about there on time, and I just wanted to wrap it up with a couple of last questions. First of all, if someone wanted to get started using Backpack, like what would they need to do to kind of get started? Would they download the wallet first, or what?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. So if you want to go to the wallet, just go to backpack.app/download, and you'll have you'll get access to the wallet on the extension, the mobile apps on Android and iOS, and then for the exchange, just go to backpack.exchange and sign up with a email password and start trading crypto.
So it has a desktop and mobile web app.
That's right. Yeah, or an extension app and a mobile app.
And one quick touch point real quick. Is it built using React Native, the mobile app?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, got it. I haven't tried it. I just assumed because I had mentioned before my friend Peter Prikarchik, me and him go way back. Like we used to have a podcast together called React Native Radio, and we've done React Native stuff forever. And I know that he works with you, so I kind of was assuming that he was doing some React Native stuff there.
Yeah. No, Peter is a React Native legend, and that's super cool. I had no idea that you guys did a podcast together. What a small world.
Yeah, we did for almost
That's
3
awesome.
years. Good times. Cool. Well, I appreciate your time. I know you're super busy. I know it's now like past midnight over there in Japan. So thanks for taking the time to come here and chat.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks.